Hey guys, Ath here. Today I want to talk about how to be effective, survivable, and spell point efficient with the latest of the Shiradi builds, one of the most OP builds in the game, the Shiradi Zombie. This video will not cover feats, enhancements, gear or twists. If you're looking for that in particular, you can check the description of this video. There's a direct link to the DDO forums where the build is posted. I'm more interested to talk about playstyle and help you understand the build a bit better if you don't already know that. We'll talk about buffs, potions, Arcane Supremacy, Metamagics, zerging, and stacking up Empyrean Magic and Mental Hunting, and their relevance to the build. But just before starting, I want to make a small note on the energy critical feat. If you're using it, you may want to note that it has a bug on it. Whenever you log in with the feat on, when you log back in, whenever you log off with the feat on, when you log back in, the actual effect will disappear. Notice in my case right now, my spell crit chance, and I just logged into the game. So in order to fix it, just turn your feet off and back on manually. Now watch the difference. I'm actually getting the 9%, the extra 9% right now. And I also encourage you to place your prism and your energy critical next to each other. So every time you log into the game, you don't forget to turn both on. Very important. But let's go back to our topic, and my first point here is the potion usage. I have a few potions that I use for various reasons, but mostly to increase my spell power, my universal spell power, and of course my force spell power. First in this list is the potion of greater impact, plus 20 of alchemical to force, with a duration of 3 minutes. I buy it from Portable Hole. There are a few places you can buy it from, not just only Portable Hole. For everything else, any other spell power boost, I use the potion of supreme efficacy, plus 15 alchemical to universal spell power. Once again, every 3 minutes. This potion I buy it from House Fierlin, and I think it's the only place you can buy it from. The plus 25 alchemical to universal from the Commendations of Valor. This one can be expensive if you don't have lots of commendations to spare, but it also has a nice duration of 10 minutes. Notice they're all alchemicals so far, but you don't have to worry about stacking them up. They all stack perfectly. The next in line, on a 15 minutes duration, there are you have the Yuga potions. I only use Intelligence and Constitution because the downside effects are not a big deal to the build, so they don't affect me. The Elixirs of Supreme Ability, plus 2 to all skills for 1 hour. These are store pods, so they don't come cheap. You can also acquire this through remnants. Again, they don't come cheap in this case either. 250 remnants for only one potion that lasts for 1 hour, and that gives you plus 2 to only one skill. You can choose the skill, but it's only one skill. If that's the case and you want to use remnants to get these potions, I would only use them for Constitution or Constitution and Intelligence. That's it. The flask from the Carnival Festival. I don't tend to use it that often because of the downside effect. But this one and the Zakasian Earthwaller, the clicky, they're both nice buffs for an end fight, for example. And I say this, the Zakasian Earthwaller is a clicky, but at this point I finished with all the potions. I'm gonna talk about clickies right now. I don't tend to use it that often either, the Zakasian Earthwaller. Another great clicky is the Regalia from the Night Revels Festival. It gives you extra spell crit damage for 90 seconds. It's a long duration, and which is even nicer is that it lasts through shrines. So you can, if you haven't used it yet, you can hit it before shrining, shrine up, and then you have the buff, which is nice. Now, spells that I use to buff my spell power. GH and Healing Spring. Healing Spring, Phase Spring, is not working as intended. I don't think it is. You can stack it up if you have different. If you have people with different ranks spent in Phase Spring. If they all cast Healing Spring, when they cast Healing Spring, the universal spell power bonus that you get, you will add up. So the plus 2 will add up with the plus 4, and with the plus 6 will make a total of plus 12, which is for an awesome plus 12, but which I don't think it is working as intended. I won't talk about Will Spring of Power and Spell Power action boost yet. I'll come back at this point later. Actually, the next point I want to talk about is the spell power boosting through stacks of Empyrean Magic and Mental Hunting. Even a bigger point than the previous one, if you want, and not just only for the total amount of spell power you get by keeping these 2 at max stacks all the time, but also for the extras they come to offer. And I'm talking about 110 universal spell power, 10% extra crit chance, and 60% extra crit damage. That makes this point a huge part of the build when it comes to DPS. But first things first, let's discuss Empyrean Magic. There's a few options for Shiradi Zombie to use in order to gain stacks here. 3 of them involve PvE action and 2 of them they don't. From those ones, the cheapest one is the Eternal Wand of Cure Minor Wounds, of course, free of any costs. It recharges itself, but it requires equipment, and you can find it somehow slower than Close Wounds. The actual spell from Favor Soul, make sure if you use it, turn all the Metamagics off on it, because after all, the only reason you're using this spell is to gain stacks. But in the same time, it could also turn into a lifesaver if you got it assigned on a shortcut button. I've seen it crit flashes for 200, 300 hit points sometimes, so there's always that option to save your body from a certain death. Next options I'm gonna present involve PvE action. Scorching Ray first in line, of course. Avenging Light as a tier 1 twist from Exalted Angel. I prefer to twist Primal Scream instead, but I know people who like using Avenging Light as much, and they like it. Of course, Hellball, and if any of the previous options would only give you 1 stack per use, in Hellball's case, you can get a maximum of 2 stacks. All it takes is to make your Hellball rebound on a second mob after you hit the first one directly. An easy way to do that is by going into the middle of a full group of mobs and just Hellball them. I'll show you what I'm talking about later on. Now, unlike Empyrean Magic, stacking up Mental Hunting could be difficult at times. So while I find no excuse for myself when I fall behind in stacks for Empyrean Magic, other than I'm not paying enough attention to the game, when it comes to Mental Hunting, I don't put such pressure on myself. I'm fine with it. After all, the only way you can get these stacks up are through 2 spells, both involving PvE action. Arcane Bolt is a single target spell, and the Arcane Blast is the AoE one. They both have a reflex save, so using these spells on mobs with evasion could sometimes leave you with no stacks at all. It could also turn into a real challenge to build up 30 stacks of Mental Hunting facing a red name, for example, with no trash around him. Usually, if that's the case, if you start from 0, the red name will probably be dead by the time you'll ever get to 30. This is why I don't put much pressure on myself when building up mental hunting stacks, and it's also why I tend to open up a fight with Arcane Blast. But I'll come back. I'll come back on this point later on. I want to talk about a third major point right now. It's huge as the second, in my opinion, if not bigger. The Arcane Supremacy. Arcane Supremacy, if you want, is 12 seconds of God mode. Every 90 seconds, you get an extra 25% spell crit chance and 100% spell crit damage. Now, for me, this is the interval of time I want to play my build in. This is why I play the build. This is why I build the build. This is when I want to hit all my damage dealing spells, and not just only. This is exactly what I made this video, to be honest. I've been hearing a lot of people complaining about the build. That is not as great as few people say. But they forget one thing. They forget Arcane Supremacy and how important Arcane Supremacy it is to this build. Take my case for example. When Arcane Supremacy triggers, and if I have Empyrean Magic stacked up to 10, I get to a total of 94 spell crit chance for my spell force. So that's 6 for my 4 spells, sorry. So that's only 6% miscrit chance for my Ruin and Greater Ruin. But anyways, there are other Ruin King builds. Most probably they could get to this this high chance. I don't know. I've been only playing this Shiradi so far, and this is the only Ruin King build I ever played. But what makes this build different from other builds when using Arcane Supremacy is the survivability and the spell point efficiency it offers you. Of course, through a clever use of Arcane Supremacy. Now, I said I will come back to this point and talk about Wellspring of Power and Spell Power Action Boost. This is the time when I use them. Wellspring of Power is on a 3-minute cooldown. That means I can hit it once every 2 Arcane Supremacies. And the other time I tend to use Spell Power Action Boost. Next thing I do, I cast Death Aura and Lesser Death Aura, sorry, on myself. And this is what I meant by survivability, spell points efficiency, and clever use. So not only that your Death Aura, my Death Aura will probably crit me with the max crit damage for the next 2 minutes. If I wear the DOJ gloves, so my Death Aura is on 2 minutes extended. But it also saved me the time and effort and spell points to heal myself with negative energy bursts, unless I get hit by huge amounts of damage. Anyhow, most of you guys probably still spam negative energy burst a lot while zerging, the exact same way I did, I used to do before, or you probably already built your playstyle around the negative energy burst, which is not wrong. But if you want to make it through an EE DOJ, for example, or a Legendary Elite Shroud Part 1 with no pots and still want to be effective to the group, that means no ruins and no energy bursts, negative energy bursts. With that in mind, casting Death Aura with Arcane Supremacy offers you the freedom of play, making yourself to worry less about your hit points and more about other stuff like DPSing or and using chain missile, SLA, stuff like that. If, however, you fight the red name, an end boss, casting Death Aura could be somehow irrelevant if there's no trash around it and there's no danger for you. and you're sure you won't get the boss's aggro, I would use that 12 seconds margin for more DPS, spamming up more DPS spells. But anyways, the most important point, sub-point of Arcane Supremacy in here, is to keep track of it and predict when it will hit next. Probably also one of the most challenging things to do. Why? Because there are so many things to do with this build, so many spells you can cast, potions, buffs. There's a lot to do with this build. I didn't say it was an easy build to play, but it comes with practice. So if you practice a lot, you'll get better with it. Why is so important? Because you want to create this repetitive sequence in your playstyle to keep you perform at best all the times. And the answer is again, Death Aura. The easiest way to track your Arcane Supremacy is actually by casting Death Aura and watch its timer in your buff bar. I wear the DOJ gloves myself, so my Death Aura, as I said, is 2 minutes extended. So I expect every time is close to 40 seconds and less, a new Arcane Supremacy could trigger. If it's the case for a red name, I always stop using Ruin and Greater Ruin when the timer hits 50 seconds or less. So that way I will have my fresh Ruin and Greater Ruin when the Arcane Supremacy will trigger. Okay, 4 point now. Metamagics. I want to talk about Metamagics and how I use the Metamagics on my spells. This is covered on the DDO forums as well, in the post, but you'll have to read all the messages, I guess. So anyways, a good thing, the first thing I encourage you to do is to go read the DDO forums and read the build exactly. It's very well presented over there. Anyways, Metamagics. All my Metamagics are turned off except for Maximize. Why except for Maximize? It's only because I cut the costs on Maximized spells to an additional only 1 spell point through the Meridian Fragment and enhancements. But again, more information on gear enhancements if you click the link in the description and go to the DDO forums. I manually turned on each SLA spell on my hotbar. After all, SLA spells don't cost you any additional spell points. I did the same for Ruin and Greater Ruin, Hellbolt, and a negative energy burst. For the rest of the spells, I arrange them. You can arrange them as you please. Even for Ruin, Greater Ruin, Hellbolt, negative energy burst, you can do as you like. Just make sure you turn on all your SLAs. I also quickened Invis. I like to, if I'm to use Invis, I like it to be quickened. I don't want to wait a lot of time to get Invis. I extended Rage and Haste, so if I ever use Rage or Haste, they're extended. Melfolk Blessings as well, it's extended. But anyways, you got the idea. The idea is to have all the SLAs with the Metamagics on. Magic Missile, Chain Missile, and Scorching Ray, the Sork spells, only maximized if you wear the Meridian Fragment. If you don't wear the Meridian Fragment, turn maximized off. After all, it's more about the procs and less about the power you put in it and the spell power. And there's always the option of dumping spell points by turning in power and quicken on. So if you find yourself with lots of spell points and the shrine, shrine is coming up, you can turn on Empower and quicken, even enlarge if you have enlarge. Go for it. Last point before jumping into TOE and show you what I've been explaining so far, I want to talk about my spell selection while zerging. And I normally open up with Arcane Blast, followed up by Chain Missile, SLA Chain Missile, and Chain Missile again. I consider this a good approach, even with the risk of getting evaded by Arcane Blast sometimes. Open it up with Chain Missile or any other spell, depending on the group. The group could split apart after the first spell you throw at them, or some mobs could even die. So even though you can get some Nerve Venom procs, you risk to cast Arcane Blast on a mob that's completely isolated from the rest of the group. So you'll have to readjust only to cast a spell that deals no damage in the first place. There's also the high chances to have Arcane Supremacy proc from the start. So then you'll miss out some mental hunting stacks on your first Death Aura. There's also that. As long as it goes for this spell selection pattern, you can clear most of the quests with it. A bit slower, but for a minor spell point cost. Occasionally you can cast Energy Burst, Primal Scream. That's also why I have Primal Scream twisted, and I like it so much. Not only for the extra hit points, but also for the DPS and the no save on it. But of course, if you want to go faster, use Hellbolt, turn on the Metamagics. There's always that option. But never open up with Energy Burst, for example. Especially if you're running on the Constitution build, means that your Energy Burst DC is probably low. So I'd rather wait to get some Shiradi procs like Nerve Venom before going in with an Energy Burst. Okay, so now that we covered pretty much everything that I wanted to talk about, let's get some action in ToE and show you exactly what I was explaining so far. And first, let's buff up a little bit.
Finally reached the innermost precincts of the Temple of Elemental Evil. Now, the final hunt.
Alright, so as I said, the first thing I'll do is casting Arcane Blast on these mobs here. I hope that my Arcane Supremacy will pop on from the beginning. Let's see if it does. If it's not doing it, okay, it did. Wellspring of Power. Okay, Wellspring. Death Aura. Lesser Death Aura. And now I'm okay to clear this trash. I tend to use Scorching Ray as well. After I hit my AoE spells, I tend to use Scorching Ray just to get some more stacks of Empyrean Magic. I tend to miss a lot, it seems. So, okay, so Hellbolt now. I got 2 stacks. That's what I was talking about. Hitting a first mob and then rebound on a second mob right afterwards. It will give you 2 stacks. I'm gonna try this again. It gave me 2 stacks right now. It will not work if you tried it on a single mob, for example. So notice my Death Aura is at 30 seconds right now, and there it goes. Arcane Supremacy. I'm using spell power boosts right now. And I'm casting another Death Aura. So yeah, that's pretty much it. That's the picture. This is what I wanted to show you. If you try hard enough, or not hard enough, if you try to get used to this pattern, it's a very good thing. I encourage you to do this. So yeah guys, thanks for watching. Hope you liked the video. I hope it was helpful for you. Share it, like it, leave a comment below. If you have extra things to add, please leave it in comments. And see you in game, and long live the Shiradi Sword. Thanks for watching guys.